All right, so Max, you recently wrote and we published an article called AI Traffic is Already in Your Analytics, You're Just Not Seeing It, which was such an interesting and exciting article to read. So I wanted to talk with you about the content in the article and kind of what you found and what marketers can take from this. Let's start here though. What was the issue that you were hoping to investigate?
It all started when I noticed one of our clients, the direct traffic, was accelerating quite impossibly. We had a baseline of around 50, 60,000 sessions from direct, and all of a sudden we were getting 70, 80, 90. And they were 2 pages that people aren't going to type manually into their browser. It posed the question of, are we seeing these LLM providers, are they not attaching UTM parameters or a referral or any sort of identifying information onto the links so that when someone clicks onto those links and they visit our site, we can't attribute it to those LLM models? And so it got me thinking, what happens if I click a link on my phone in the ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity or etc. app, and I look at that visit on my client's server logs? And so I did that. And I found that not only was my visit coming in without any referral or anything, but it was coming in as a regular Safari visit, as a direct visit. And I went through iOS on Copilot, on Claude, on ChatGPT, on Gemini, and on Perplexity. I tried it on the desktop apps on Mac, and I tried it on an Android device too. And what I found was that by and large at that time, almost nobody was really attributing themselves or that link to an LLM. It was all coming in direct. There were some nuances in there, and I captured that. But for the most part, a visit from ChatGPT just came in as direct. And that kind of opened my eyes into what are we missing?
For those who might not understand, can you describe the way that traffic, that LLM traffic from a browser is tracked, and then the way that it is not tracked in an app?
Essentially, when you are on your iPhone and you ask ChatGPT a question or Claude, and you say, I'm looking for this information, and it presents a link to you. At the time of this writing of this article, if you clicked on that link, it would have been no different than if you had a bookmarked link on your Safari app to the eyes of somebody visiting that traffic in Google Analytics 4. Now, expand that. You say, okay, what about server logs? The server logs holds the key to a lot of information that GA4 is not going to report. And so when you look at that, you get your typical information like the user agent, for example. There will be a refer in there, but it might be blank. It might contain a refer. You might see some other stuff as well in there. And what I found was that my visit from Safari versus a visit from the built-in browser within ChatGPT looked identical.
Interesting. You found some instances in which LLM traffic was tracked to a limited extent, and you were able to extrapolate and make an estimate as to the percentage of LLM traffic that was being captured in analytics, which was minuscule. Share a little bit about that.
What I did find in Gemini was that the user agent contained just a little bit of text that says Gemini iOS. Again, there's no referral, there's no UTM parameters, there's nothing else but that little key within the UA. And so what I did find was that we look at referrals, for example. A referral comes from the web, specifically with Gemini. And so if I visited our site from Gemini, it would attach that Gemini referred this. We were able to look at GA4 and say, okay, we had 5 visits for this one client during this time period. And then I looked at the server logs, and I pulled up the Gemini iOS tag, just the iOS tag alone. Now, mind you, this wasn't Android, this wasn't anyone else, this is just Gemini iOS. And I found that we had somewhere around 35, I think, around 35 visits from just that alone. So the ratio is 5 referrals in GA4 versus 35 visits from the Gemini iOS app in our server logs under the same time period. And then on top of that too, Gemini just added that feature sometime in February.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where it's like, it really gets your mind going of like, how much of this traffic is actually coming in from AI?
Yeah, exactly. We don't know, but you came up with some interesting estimates, and you also came up with an approach that marketers can use to develop their own estimate as to how much traffic they're getting from LLMs. Before we get to the method, maybe share why this is important for marketers, why it's important for their decision making, for understanding the marketing channels in which they invest, and also the returns they're getting from investments in AI optimization.
Man, that is a loaded question.
I think that was 3 questions in one. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I think it too. I think I'll start with the kind of the ROI on that. So I think one thing that I've seen in the space is, especially with a lot of my clients, but a lot of my clients are very informational based. And so they pose the question like, why are we bothering to write this information, write these answers that AI is just going to scrape and we're not going to see that traffic, right? You look at GA4, we look at the referral, for example, which I have a referral tag on all my clients and it encapsulates all the LLMs we could think of. And we look and we're only getting 300, 400, 500 sessions from those LLMs in a month for various clients. It's twofold. A, should we even be optimizing for AI because the traffic seems so minuscule? And B, if we're seeing low click-through rates in Google Search Console, if we're seeing just less traffic overall in this content, should we produce it still? And the answer was definitively yes, because that 300, 400, 500 metric is like the smallest sliver of the actual picture of what might actually be happening in the background.
I think your estimate was at most it's 9% of the actual traffic.
Correct, yeah. And going back to the client where I saw the incremental gains out of nowhere, we're going to URLs that no one's going to type manually. They might bookmark it, but if you look at your baseline, this is one of the things that I would encourage everyone to do, is look at your baseline sessions for direct traffic over an extended period of range and just see if there's any anomalies there. If you're seeing an increase in those, especially to pages that, again, no one's going to type out. People are going to type out your homepage, but no one's going to type out a 7-path, 5-path, 4-path subfolder into your website and press enter. That might give you a better idea of actually what's happening behind the scenes in terms of AI.
Yeah. And there's another implication here too in terms of traffic quality and intent, right? Because if these visitors are going to pages that are deep within a site, that it's a product page, it's a landing page that has to do with lead conversion, it's a deep funnel informational page, the quality of that traffic and the intent of that visitor is much different than the average direct visitor.
It's much higher. It's much better. We're seeing that across, again, all of my clients, where the leads coming in from this direct or attributed traffic is overall much better.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing that we see across our clients. So where revenue is the metric, where leads or new customer starts are the metric, we are seeing less traffic, but the traffic is so much higher quality. And the rate of conversion of economic return is much higher year over year than we'd have feared. All our clients are having record years instead of down years.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what should marketers do to go through the same process you did to diagnose and estimate how much traffic they're actually getting from LLMs, whether on browser or in an app?
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways to do it. And I really encourage anyone in marketing to have access to server logs, because this is where you can get really into the weeds and really nerd out on how AI is approaching your website. And this is constantly changing. So when I wrote this article, almost nobody was attributing themselves to your visit. Now we've got a couple changes. Maybe they read my LinkedIn post. I don't know. But now we're seeing ChatGPT and some others tagging themselves in the URL.
Yeah. And this is a pretty consistent theme in the advice that we give clients and the approach we take as well, which is control your own destiny as much as possible. Don't rely on a third party to interpret your data, to miss things. And server logs are the raw materials from which you can figure out what's truly happening, not what a third party actually says is happening based upon their analytical approach, their biases, the bugs in their system, that sort of thing. Max, you wanted to screen share a little bit and show what you found?
I am sharing our active server logs. It's filtered to just my IP address so we can see me. And then to the right here is my phone. It's being screencasted to my computer. Right now I have Gemini open. And I think Gemini is a really great one to start with, because what I'll ask it is I'll say, I'll ask it, who is Wheelhouse? I'll click into here real quick. Who is Wheelhouse DMG? What services do they offer? Can you share links? So we're going to get two different types of links here. We're going to get research links, which they use for citations. And we're going to get the actual links to say, hey, here's the links you asked for. So when this prompt is done, I hit in here and I look at this about us here. What we're going to see is the in-app browser load up. It highlights this text, and we should be able to see us pop in right here. Now you'll notice that I don't have, you can see ChatGPT provided a UTM source here. We don't have that here. And in fact, we don't have refer anything within this request. But again, what we do have is this little bit of text right here that identifies that this visit came from the iOS app for Gemini. So I'm going to then load up I'll load up ChatGPT. I'll ask it the same question. Who is Wheelhouse DMG? What are their services? Can you provide links? It's going to do the same process. We're going to see the citation links. We're going to see probably some bottom links down here. I'll click on this citation link right here real quick. We'll see us pop up again. Again, you can see that UTM source that I alluded to earlier. But, and I think this is a really good distinction, if this were to drop, there is no other way for us to attribute this visit to ChatGPT. And so what we were seeing earlier was this didn't exist. And this right here looks exactly like a regular web visit from Safari on iOS. And so what we're seeing again is that influx of direct traffic that was coming up was mostly to do with a lot of these links that just weren't attributed with this UTM source. And they get really deep. So, this is just a homepage. But, and you can imagine if you're in content creation and you're writing articles and articles and you've got several content pillars, it can get pretty intensive. So we can do this view capabilities. We don't have a very deep site, but we can get into this capabilities. And we're just starting like this. This might be something that somebody has bookmarked or they would be willing to type in. But you can imagine, again, as the content builds up, we have more deep URLs. No one's typing in all this stuff. And at the time, ChatGPT was not attributing themselves to it.
If people want to take that next step and they want to work more deeply with server logs and really start to do the sort of granular analysis that you have described and suggested is so valuable, how should they go about that?
Yeah, it's complex because the way that the web works is nobody has the same exact UI. For example, we have Amazon Web Services for our server, and it is significantly more complex than another one of my clients who uses Cloudflare. And Cloudflare is actually really, really leaning into being the leader in AI for servers and giving out their users tools to monetize or block or make it easier for LLMs to crawl. And in that, they actually have a really nice dashboard for tracking AI, for tracking ChatGPT, Google, and all that stuff. But what every server should have is live logs. And so you should be able to view your activity live on that server, whether that's Cloudflare or Amazon Web Services. And then even greater, if you're really keen to see kind of what AI is doing in the background, just the logs in general is a really great thing to try out. You would export 30 days and start exploring what content is AI favoring, what content is AI not favoring.
And one of the things that you found in your analysis is that for one client, one of the content pillars that we had created, a deep content page, had already become dominant in a very short period of time. So we know you can totally move the needle very quickly. You can dominate in AI if you have an understanding of the opportunity and the understanding of the real performance that's being driven by AI as well.
Yeah, and to be clear, there's two different types of visits we're looking at. We're looking at, that refers to ChatGPT, specifically the user agent bot, crawling our client's content and offering that content as an answer into the prompt, whereas this one we're looking at a visit from my phone. Yeah. But that being said, what we saw was a correlation of, again, we actually wrote a very comprehensive content hub that picked up really quickly. Within the span of 3 months, dominated the rest of our content hubs, which was saying something. And then on top of that, we saw a direct increase in direct visits to that content from things like iPhones. And so you look at that, again, no one has that bookmarked. It was 3 or 4 levels deep. And we just saw a huge spike in direct visits, which tells me that AI was referring a lot of traffic to that content.
Yeah, it's exciting to see, but again, it's the sort of investment that you'll only continue to make if you understand the performance that's being driven by an investment like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I highly recommend server logs. Is I think one of the biggest pushes I've done this year and with my clients is give me access. And then in return, I've been able to really dig deep and provide so many insights into what they should be doing directionally with their content teams.
Yeah, that's great. All right, this is excellent, Max. Great article, really good insights. Thanks for taking the time to share.
Yeah, thank you for having me.